Good evening. My name is Eleanor Hodges, and I'm the Executive Director of EcoAction Arlington. Welcome to our program tonight to discuss the story of plastic film. For the agenda this evening, we'll have some small breakout rooms and then presentations by two amazing experts, Neil Seldman of the Institute for the Local Self-Reliance and Erik Grabowsky with Arlington County Solid Waste Bureau. For those that are new to EcoAction Arlington, we really are pleased to connect with you and hope you'll continue to join us in our efforts to create a more sustainable Arlington community. Our work works to protect Arlington's air, water, and natural places, and we do that through education, volunteer engagement, and advocacy. I'm now very pleased to introduce our two speakers. First, we'll have Neil Seldman with the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, and then that will be followed by Erik Grabowsky of the Arlington County Solid Waste Bureau.
I would like to say zero waste. The definition, the grassroots definition of zero waste is 90% diversion of the solid waste stream from landfill and incineration. There are many variants on that, but we at the grassroots level think that we have a definition that moves people as opposed to other forms of zero waste definitions that include garbage incineration for one thing. So these are the steps to take. Stop garbage incineration. I know it's cheap for your community, but it's nonetheless, it's one of the leading, along with the Fairfax incinerator at Lawton, it's the leading source of pollution in our area. Data from Baltimore shows that in that city, the incinerator causes $55 million annually of health impairment in that city. And there are very direct solutions that have been put into practice to help crack this, what I call waste not, K-N-O-T. And that is a minimum content. If you want to produce a newspaper in your city or state, it has to have 40–50% minimum content. States have minimum content for plastic packaging as well. And then there's a concept of product stewardship, which is a great concept. It's in practice in Canada a lot, in which the companies that produce the stuff that winds up in our waste, the plastic and litter on the beach, etc., they have to kick in their fair share of the budget to take care of that. And as a result of that, their monies from the big corporations go directly to cities to manage their own locally created programs. One recent example of this is San Francisco. They passed a few years ago a 2% tax on cigarettes, which they estimate will cover the cost of cleaning up cigarette butts on their streets and beaches, etc. I'm going to get back to this, but the film itself implies that this concept of extended producer responsibility is a solution. I disagree wholeheartedly. Extended producer responsibility, differentiating it from product stewardship, where companies pay in, but cities run the system subject to local organized citizens. Extended producer responsibility turns over legal responsibility for all recycling and disenfranchises cities and organized citizens from implementing recycling programs. And in the context of this film, the film is 95 minutes of what these corporations are doing to us. And then they indirectly, which we can discuss, promote extended responsibility, which turns over responsibility to the very corporations that we've been fighting for decades. So I think that's an important point, which we could talk further. Other local activities could be taxing plastic. California has a bill now, a 1-cent tax on all plastic packaging. Spain and Italy have new tax programs that tax all packaging. Other things that to reduce the cost of recycling, which is very important because the cost of recycling has doubled and tripled in the last few years as a result of the Chinese situation. Dual stream costs $30 per ton less for processing. You get better materials, get better markets. Cut subsidies to the virgin extraction oil is plastic. If you cut the extraction subsidies. You're increasing the cost of plastic, which is the right thing to do, since we don't like it. We want to tax it and make it cost more. And these bans on single-use plastic are very effective. In fact, if you go to some of the cities like Palo Alto and Berkeley that have these bans, what's happening is that companies are starting up providing for reusable takeout trays from restaurants and so on. And a whole new industry is being developed as these single-use plastics are being phased out, which is a very positive thing that can be taken at the local level. We all know that there's tons of money coming from the feds for recovery from the pandemic, and garbage and waste and recycling are considered important industries and are not closed down. Well, these industries could use some of that money for building infrastructure, for composting, reuse, the secondary MRFs, which allow you to take your low-grade plastic and high-grade it and make a product out of it. There's one very interesting thing that happened just 2 weeks ago. Urban Ore, which is a recycling company, and they were pulling, they were at the transfer station pulling very usable and reusable and recyclable materials from the waste stream just prior to it going off to the landfill. And I think it was June 2nd when the city council voted that these folks, this company and other companies that do the same, are entitled to a service fee. So they're paying Waste Management Inc. $47 a ton to take it to the landfill. So Urban Ore now gets $47 a ton, excuse me, for every ton they pull out before the garbage goes to the Waste Management Inc. facility. So let me conclude by saying that at the federal, I don't think action at the federal level is critical. The feds have, when something gets through the federal government, it usually always is a compromise. Local laws and even state laws are much more effective, in my opinion. I do think the feds could pass a carbon tax, which would mean billions and billions of dollars reinvested in not only recycling, but clean energy and all the other things we need to have a good, clean country in the future. There is some congressional legislation, as many of you may know, which is written by Udall in the Congress and Lowenthal in the House. It has a few good aspects to it. It calls for a national bottle bill, which is okay. I prefer to see a lot of different state bottle bills to help creativity in this area, particularly states that want to go to refillables, which is the ultimate zero waste answer. But the bill that Udall and Lowenthal have is an extended producer responsibility law, which turns over everything in the country to these big waste companies and Fortune 500 companies who've been playing havoc with our waste. I was born in 1945. There was so little waste in 1945 that no one counted it until 1960, when the post-war generation started the throwaway lifestyle. So I think there are many things we can do. I think this film was terrific in raising consciousness for those people not familiar with the issue. It helped people who are familiar with the issue to strengthen their reserve, to stop what's going on. I think it's good. My recommendations as a filmmaker are there. It detracts a little bit from the film for me. I do like the film, but I like the discussion to lead to a very real, heated and pointed discussion of what specifically can be done at the local, state and federal level, with most of the action, in my opinion, needs to come at the local level, because local government is in charge of solid waste management in the country. And I think that's a very good thing. If that wasn't the case, every city and county in this country with a decent population would have an incinerator in it, just as they do in Europe. So that is my conclusion. And I look forward to comments and discussion.
Thank you so much, Neil. So again, if you have questions, please type them into the chat. We're now going to turn it over to Erik Grabowsky from Arlington County Bureau of Solid Waste, and just give us a minute to transition here.
Mute. I need to share my screen. Okay. Eleanor, can you see my screen?
Yep. And you're on not on your first slide though.
More importantly, I'm not display setting. Let me get this right. Come on now, there we go. All right, well, thank you, Neil, for starting off. I appreciate that. And I want to thank you, Eleanor and EcoAction Arlington, for inviting us both to participate tonight. I'm really going to talk more tactically, kind of what happens at the local level as far as plastics and plastics management, because I think that's important for all Arlingtonians. As Neil referenced, trash and solid waste management is a local government responsibility. It has to do with public health and safety, and we take that job and role very seriously here in Arlington to make sure we are providing services that meet the needs of the community. We, in our solid waste management plan, really emphasize the waste hierarchy. We want people to reduce first, reuse second, and when we start talking about plastics and recycling, that really is the third option. We talk about recovery because Arlington does use a waste to energy facility, and again, according to EPA and research, that it is a better option than landfills, because ultimately landfills will leak at some point, and the environmental hazards associated with that. So again, we encourage all Arlingtonians to follow the waste hierarchy as is structured by the EPA. Plastics are difficult, and this talks to this cartoon. The RIC codes, the little things in numbers that you see on the bottom of the various containers, talks about, they keep changing and modifying these things, but they were confusing then, and they continue to be confusing now. People look at these things and they're just challenged as to what to do with the various things. So we're gonna have a quick class in plastics, and we're gonna talk about that and kind of what that means for Arlington. There are 7 resin codes that that has been standardized. The challenge is there are other products out there that are a combination of these various resin codes. So not everything is a 1 or 2 impure, some are. When you talk about plastics from a recycling perspective, 1s and 2s and 5s are what the MRFs are designed to handle. The MRF is the material recovery facility. When we collect your recyclables in a blue cart, we take it to the MRF, and they have a whole bunch of sorting equipment that will then take the materials and sort those out through optical sorters and a whole bunch of different technologies they use. But the 1s and 2s are typically the soda bottles, the milk jugs that you see. 5s are similar as far as ketchup bottles, yogurt containers, and those kinds of things. Now, when you talk about the recycling stream.
Excuse me, Eric. Sorry.
Yeah.
Can you zoom your slides out where they're cut off on the right and the bottom?
Right on the bottom.
Yes.
Is that better?
Don't think so. Yeah, that's better.
Is that?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
So when you talk about what we're actually, because the MRF does sorts of these
Excuse me,
things.
can you make it bigger so we can read it? Thank you.
Eleanor, were you able to do that? Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. Does that help? Is that too much or too little, or?
It cuts off number 7 almost, and now it cuts off number 1. I guess you
Yeah,
have to,
I mean,
that's better, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's better.
We can share these after the presentation if that's helpful. Yeah.
so the reality is, because we've focused on asking you to basically recycle jugs and bottles and jars, what we see is about 95% of the plastics are actually thrown in the blue cart are 1, 2s, and 5s. So about 5% of these other things, 3, 4, 6s, and 7s. And those have been a challenge for the MRFs to actually process. There's new technologies that break down plastics into its molecular structure. And also they're now doing a lot of things, Enerchem and other corporations, where they're actually turning this into various bio-related fuels. So they are trying to figure out what to do with plastics because, again, the use of plastics is not declining. The use of plastics is actually growing and will continue to grow for the foreseeable future just because of the convenience associated with it. So from, again, a tactical Arlington level, why do we recycle? Well, most importantly, it actually saves resources. It's reused, and aluminum cans are infinitely recyclable. Plastics has a degradation, so they can use 4 or 5 times for some of the bottles. But again, a lot of this stuff can actually be reused. It reduces costs. The way that we pay as a community for recyclables, we pay a tip fee at the material recovery facility. And then they sort the material and give us a rebate based on the commodity values. And I'll show you a chart about that a little bit later. But it actually costs us about $43.16 a ton to process our trash through the waste energy facility. This past month, it costs us about $24 to process recyclables. So again, the more we recycle, the more we're saving from an overall solid waste management structure. It creates jobs, the green economy, so that's a good thing. And again, it's relatively easy. The county has tried to make recycling and other solid waste management programs relatively easy for the people that we serve, meaning the residential community. And if you look at little factoids on the right, again, we only recycle about 20% of plastic. I was looking at data yesterday, and it said in the US, we only recycle about 9% of our plastic. So that's not a great number. But again, I think from an energy savings, which equates to greenhouse gas savings, it is saving about 88% when you're using virgin materials, recycled plastic over virgin materials. So those are all positive benefits. So this is what I'm talking about when we talk about value of commodities. So we sort what people put in their blue carts, and each one of those commodities has a value. We then actually figure out what percentage of a ton is associated with that various material. And a majority of what we generate is, paper related stuff. As you see in this mix, it's 20% glass. Because we've now moved glass out of recyclables, that's down to about 6% is what's actually in the recyclable. The drop-off containers are doing well. We're approaching 2.5 million pounds of glass being processed through the glass collection areas, as opposed to previously was being landfilled, so that's a positive thing. But you can see here also that if you go to the second horizontal line, or mixed plastics has value, about $360 a ton. That fluctuates with oil markets. But again, that plastic material that potentially someone's going to do something bad with and throw away, or potentially litter with, actually has value and does a lot to control our costs associated with our solid waste management system. This chart actually, on a quarterly basis, we sort through the trash of 100 homes that we have distributed throughout Arlington County. And it allows us to understand what the educational programs we're putting in place are having a positive effect. People are reacting to those things. But most importantly, allows us to understand what's in our waste stream. And if you look on the left-hand chart, about 11.3% by weight of the material that people are throwing away is plastic. And that equates to about 3,200 tons annually. And then if you look on the right, that's what's in the recycling bin. And again, about 11.8% of that, or about 1,500 tons annually, is what is going in the recycling bin. There's opportunity to move more of the stuff that people are throwing away, if it's really the 1s, 2s, and 5s, over to recyclables. But I wanted people to get a sense of what we're looking at. About, again, 4,700 tons of recyclables are either being put in the trash or the recyclers by the residential community here in Arlington on an annual basis. So these pictures are about plastic waste. Now, you probably might have seen this picture on the left is a recent shot from Scott Broom in USA 9, basically talking about how the National Park Service hasn't allowed litter cleanups to take place as of yet. I think it's a little bit staged because that stuff is stacked up pretty tight. The two on the right are what we never want to see in this community. I don't think we have. I was talking earlier that I rode around the community today. There's about an 18-mile loop that goes around Arlington. And I get a sense of how the community looks from just a trashiness perspective. And we do a pretty good job of keeping the Arlington community clean. It's a combination of what the residents do and the fact they take pride in the community here, but also the service providers to make sure we're keeping the community relatively clean. So those two pictures on the right are what I just got out the internet to basically say this is what it could look like, and it does look like in certain parts of the world and the country. It's not going to ever look like that here in Arlington County, but we do have some issues. And again, as Scott Broom reported, again, as things build up and we're not able to do cleanups, it does, you know, basically along the shorelines of the Potomac for where the water discharges and other things take place. Our solid waste system is based on 4 C's. We want it to be convenient, we want it to be comprehensive, we want it to be cost effective, and we want it to be conservation minded. And we work very hard with the county solid waste committee, which Joan is currently the chairperson of, to make sure we wrote a solid waste management plan that actually achieves the 4 goals. And we've done it, we think, pretty well. As was stated previously, you know, the county invested in the late 80s in waste to energy conversion technology. And so there's an incinerator or a waste to recovery facility that's actually located in the city of Alexandria, that the city of Alexandria and Arlington in the mid-1980s in a joint venture went ahead and built. And because we thought that was the most responsible way to manage solid waste without putting our trash in some other jurisdiction's, you know, location, meaning broader, some landfill somewhere, which may be problematic. So that is the facility we currently use and operate. We have a contract with Covanta to operate it till 2038, and that date will become significant as I talk later on. But that is where our trash goes. We have a very good rate as far as disposal because, again, we have this partnership from a construction perspective. That slide on the right is the Waste Management Elk Ridge MRF. That is where our recyclables are taken, where they're basically put through a series of conveyors and sorting machines and actually baled into different materials. This slide reflects that. On the right, you will see what happens to the materials as they're sorted out. And that is basically a cube of paper or plastic, whether it be 1s or 2s, I'm not sure, it's probably 2s. But again, they will package it in that regard so they can sell it on the commodity markets. Because again, people want the raw plastic to be used. As you look from the left, that is really what is talked about from an EPA perspective about the virtues and values of waste energy. And I know people have different perspectives on waste to energy, but the EPA is saying that for every ton of municipal solid waste processed at an energy from waste facility, the release of approximately 1 ton of carbon dioxide equivalent emissions into the atmosphere is prevented. And again, people can argue on both sides of that, but that's what, you know, kind of the current rule from the EPA says. So we talk about what we can do and what things are going on. So this is what the county is doing. Back in 2015, the county adopted a zero waste goal, which is 90% diversion from incineration and landfilling by 2038. We understand there's always going to be some residual, this 10%. And again, that's where we think waste energy does in fact have a role, because you're just never going to get to zero. 90% is a pretty good start. So this is 2038 is when we want to be down to, you know, up to 90% diversion. And Joan will lead the solid waste committee and others in that effort. And that will start either at the end of this year or next year with a formal planning process. The zero waste plan will replace what is currently the solid waste management plan that expires in June of 2024. So the new plan will have to be adopted by the board prior to that date, and that is the plan right now. We're in the process now, based on the guidance from the county board through this last budget process, that we're doing a solid waste assessment. That bid solicitation will actually close next week. And they will basically do a recycling markets analysis. They will talk about solid waste facilities and whether they should be public or private facilities. And they will talk about sustainable materials management, greenhouse gas reduction, and just educational programs about food scraps and other things. We did institute the 5 glass drop-off locations in 2019. And as I quoted earlier, those have proven to be very successful. We have ongoing efforts for recycling right through our education campaigns, and the community has been very responsive and done a great job of reducing our contamination rate, which in many communities is beyond 20%. Our last waste audit reflected our contamination rate was 5%. So that's pretty incredible from, you know, a very affluent neighborhood and community like ourselves. So congratulations to all of you for that effort. The plastic bag tax, again, as we were talking earlier, the state has authorized local communities to institute a bag tax if they wish. I think that is a direction and a goal for the county board, and I know the county manager's office. And so the requirement is that we can't start till January 1st of 2021. We have to give 90 days notice prior to the Commissioner of Revenue. So I would imagine during the first quarter or either the fourth quarter of this calendar year or first quarter of next year, we will be talking about instituting a plastic bag tax. The challenge right now, as was mentioned earlier with COVID-19, and people are saying they don't want people to bring in their reusable bags. It would be a bad time to institute a tax on bags when those are the prescribed method to actually carry things around. So the COVID-19 has influenced the decision as to when to make that move as far as implementing that tax. We are hoping, and again, the board is kind of pushing this direction based on the guidance they gave at the last budget adoption, was to hopefully implement food scraps collection starting July 1st of 2021. We have a study going on to talk about that, and we have some other things going on, but we'll be reaching out to the community with surveys, asking them their thoughts on implementing food scraps collection. And then, as I said before, legislative efforts, you know, the county always puts together a legislative package that goes down to Richmond for their representatives to articulate. And again, they're looking for additional things from an environmental perspective. I know EcoAction Arlington has some ideas on what should be potentially done away with, so whether it be styrofoam or straws or food packaging, trying to influence on how we can manage those materials more sustainably. We have some challenges. Obviously, everybody's living through the COVID-19, and we're not doing this in person as a result of that. But, you know, PPE generation, just gloves and masks and all this additional litter. You know, when you go to Lowe's or Home Depot, you see people throwing plastic gloves on the ground and all that kind of plastic pollution. So I'd encourage people to do the right thing and, you know, put those in the trash. But we are just seeing a tremendous generation of the PPE as a result of the COVID-19. The same with plastic bag generation, because people aren't allowed to bring their reusable bags. We're just seeing more of that material. And then shopping at home, everybody's stuck at home, so they're going to Amazon and elsewhere. And as I sit and look out my window, I just see, you know, Peapod and other delivery services just bringing material. And then, you know, just the mailers that are being delivered to the homes and the cardboard and everything else, it's contributing to this increase in the amount of material being collected. And then just the lifestyles we're beginning to lead, you know, and it was referred to by Neil, you know, when in 45 people didn't generate a lot of waste, and to where now we're focused on just convenience over sustainability, fast fashion, fast food, fast delivery. All those contribute to the waste stream and not necessarily a positive way. And finally, as you saw in the film, plastic management is hard. It's overwhelming. And so again, the Arlington system is designed to manage plastics as we generate them. They're either going to be managed through recycling or they're going to be managed through, you know, energy recovery. And so part of it is for you and I here in Arlington, we can effectively manage plastic waste if we're using the systems as they've been designed by the county to support you from a solid waste management perspective. So as I said, plastic is complex and requires manufacturers and suppliers to find new solutions. And this is not new. And we've been asking the various manufacturers to do this for a long time. To start with, I'm not going to produce something unless I know it can be recycled on the end. So we need the MRFs who are actually managing the raw material from a recycle perspective to talk with the manufacturers to make sure what they're actually putting the content of the material in is actually have a market on the back end. Because the reality with recycling is, unless there's somebody who's going to buy that product, it really cannot be recycled. So the idea of wishful recycling, that we're going to drive the markets, doesn't necessarily work. There has to be somebody who needs that material, who can use that material for it to be viable to recycle. And so the idea is that we want them to use the 1s and the 2s and the 5s, those things which are highly recyclable, in the manufacture of their various products. It doesn't always work. PVC is very good at what it does as far as drainage pipe and other things. So again, they need to manufacture this stuff that makes the most sense, but at the same time have an eye towards what is its life cycle, what's going to happen to this product at the very end. Also, from a challenge in the recycling world is when they mix plastics. There's just nothing that can be done about that until we turn it back into some kind of molecular structure, break it down, and possibly into, you know, various fuels and chemicals. And again, the last one, ensure end-of-life products are easier to disassemble and recycle. And again, that goes really back to the first comment. Again, this is really looking at what you're designing to see whether it can be recycled at the end. I know there's a whole bunch of analysis for life cycle cost, and that's why you're seeing pods and flexible packaging and all those kind of things, because they made the analysis and said, from a life cycle perspective, it makes more sense to deliver this in a flexible packaging pouch than a rigid plastic container. And again, that's just a trade-off that, you know, sustainability wise, we need to figure out where our values are and what's important, because again, is it about the money or is it about long-term sustainability? And those are always choices and always in conflict with each other. So I know I've said a lot of bad things. So let's sort of talk about some good news. The US is expanding its plastic processing capacity. As you've heard about the China sword and the green fence and all those things, where we were basically prevented from shipping our waste plastics to China and Hong Kong, a couple of good things have happened. It required us to clean up the material dramatically, which has been good for us because now we're not exporting all this waste plastic. We're exporting plastics that are actually viable from a recycling and reuse perspective. So, and also the fact that we've added capacity nationally means a lot more of that stuff is going to stay here in the United States and be reprocessed here. So that's a good thing. The Northeast Region Recycling Coalition and the American Plastic Recyclers launched a government demand recycling champions program. And this is really encouraging local governments to lead by example and really follow and try to buy materials with higher recycled content to try to prime the pump for recycling markets. This has been ongoing for a while, meaning the idea of doing that. This is just another effort that hopefully people will really take heart with and actually try to, you know, between Arlington Public Schools and the county government, really look at how we purchase things and if we're buying things and trying to, again, prime that pump for a recycling perspective. As was talked about by Neil, you know, legislative efforts across the country, whether it be bans or bottle bills or single-use containers, straw bans, those are all things that need to be looked at. And again, you as consumers and I as a consumer really control, you know, if we stop buying plastic straws, they're going to stop making plastic straws. So again, we're as powerful as we are from a legislative perspective by our economic actions. Another thing, which unfortunately the US is not a signatory to, which is the Basel Convention. And this is really going to help those countries, I think, where we're focused of that, the film, the plastic film in Southeast Asia. It basically is going to prohibit the transboundary movement of plastic waste. And what was happening is people were sending plastic and maybe 60% of it was reusable plastic, 40% maybe waste plastic. And that was the stuff that was being basically put on the street or in the waterways and so on and so forth. So with the Basel Convention, that's going to eliminate that. So how does that impact the US? Well, there are caveats that would allow us still to export plastics, but they have to be clean plastic, meaning 1, 2s, and 5s that are actually very clean. So those materials aren't going to become waste plastics in those parts of the world. They're actually going to be recycled into something new. And then again, you're seeing increased awareness, the ocean campaigns, et cetera. And all these things are just like tonight in EcoAction Arlington, bringing more energy, but more focus on the plastics problem so people can try to address it. So here's what I ask you to do something. And I ask you to cut down on single-use plastic products you use. You make purchasing decisions every single day. Travel with reusable water bottles so you don't have to actually go buy single-use plastics. Carry reusable shopping totes, and when the COVID, you know, slows down a little bit and we're able to bring our bags, that'll prevent you from having additional plastic bags. Buy goods that are easily recyclable. You know, again, if you're buying things in flexible packaging, you just have to know in advance that flexible packaging will not be recycled. If you buy a Tide bottle, with the neck and the cap on it, those things are in fact recyclable. So you can, you know, by your purchasing decision, determine whether that, you know, you're going to be able to recycle that product or not. And again, so that chart 1 through 7 focused on the 1, 2s, and 5s is the important thing. And then again, it really goes into what I just said. If you are buying plastic and using them, please recycle them responsibly. Know what is in fact recyclable. And then if it's recyclable, great. If it's not, please put it in the trash can. so we can actually manage this solid waste most effectively. And that's all I've got to say. Again, I do appreciate the opportunity to talk. I know I speak quickly. I wasn't sure, whether I was going to meet my 15 minutes or not, but I just wanted to really reemphasize from a tactical level that Arlington's system does work. If you are using our system, we're going to manage your plastics effectively. And again, thank you for your support. That's all I've got.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Erik, and thank you, Neil. So we are now going to turn it over to two of our board members, Carrie Thompson and Joan McIntyre. So they will be reading the questions from the chat and addressing them to Erik and Neil. And I think you guys can both unmute yourself, Carrie and Joan.
Oh, yeah, I'm unmuted. Okay.
Yeah.
Put myself back on the screen. Thank you so much. Those were two fabulous presentations. And I think the first question a number of people had is, might we get the slides afterwards? Because that was a lot of information and it would be good to look at it. I think the answer is yes, right? Erik, maybe the first question for you, you touched on it, the power of the fact that Arlington County has its own purchasing power, but what is the county? And couldn't Arlington County be doing more, or any county government to buy single-use plastics for government operations and for schools?
So what the county has done is they've actually banned the purchase of single-use plastic bottles. So unless there's something where it doesn't work, we don't normally for events have plastic, just single-use plastic containers. That's one thing the county board has done from that perspective. But I think there's always more. I mean, as we write specifications to say we want copy paper, when this first started about recycled content and copy paper, it was not a very good quality paper and got stuck in all the copy machines. But over time, the industry responded to that and said, well, we're going to make a better quality mixed content with recycled content paper. And so they've evolved over time using more recycled content and copy paper. And so the county buys recycled content in their copy and paper. There is what the county board and the county manager, when Barbara Dinello was here, there's what I'm trying to think, it's an environmentally preferable purchasing policy that the county has. And so they've actually written a document that actually articulates that the county goal should be to basically prime the pump for recyclables, and where we can, buy material that's recyclable. Understanding that you have to do the cost dynamics and those kind of things. But as always, and what you've referred to, is I think there's always more we can do. I'm not sure what APS's policies are, but there are things that we can, actually do more of.
Very good. A related question is, you talked about purchasing power, and Neil, I'd be happy to have you weigh in as well. Can the county do more? Can other organizations like EcoAction do more to educate consumers about their purchases? And how should we specifically go about it? People are so busy, but that's where change needs to happen.
I think all of us should kind of look at what we do and what products we use and find out whether there's an alternative. And if we follow the waste hierarchy to say, one, do I need to buy that packaged at all? Because if it's just packaged, when you go to they say stay on the exterior of your grocery store because that's where the fresh fruits and vegetables are. And so if you can buy a fresh peach as opposed to a canned peach, you're going to realize you don't have that can to deal with. So I think the reality is it starts with us as individuals to figure out what we buy, how we buy it, and whether we can buy it in a more sustainable way. And so that's kind of how I look at there's a book about zero waste, which really talks to this whole thing about how she really manages her life from a zero waste perspective. And she gives a lot of good ideas about, how she manages her clothing, how she manages her makeup, how she manages her food choices. And it's all about minimizing the extra waste associated with everything. And so I just think, again, it starts with each of us thinking about how we can change our lives, thinking about what we want to accomplish, which is generating less trash potentially.
I think you're muted.
We can't hear you.
Yeah.
Erik, did you want to add to that? I'm sorry, Neil.
Only to say that in terms of your organization, promoting the things that Erik mentioned, also, obviously, the county sits in the middle of a major metropolitan area, sharing information with other jurisdictions, co-op purchasing perhaps could not only reduce the cost, but attract more different companies and more innovation, the way Erik outlined how the recycled paper with paper with recycled content was developed as a copying substitute.
That response is a nice segue into an early question. It's a comment and then a question. Successful recycling happens best regionally. How could Arlington partner with other local jurisdictions? And, you know, if we want to model ourselves as well on some of our neighboring jurisdictions, DC, Maryland, you know, which one perhaps is a better model for us?
My opinion on that is it's split, because I think regional cooperation on attracting end-use markets is absolutely essential. And there are many industrial policies, recycled market development zones, such as in California, which is a state and local cooperative program. In Austin and Alachua County, they're building their own industrial infrastructure for recycling companies. On the other hand, I think Erik made the point very well. Cities with very small scale are handling their materials very well. In my opinion, cities like DC and Baltimore are using processing facilities that are oversized and far away, 20, 30 miles. So therefore, cost of recycling is going up. But in your situation where you're processing locally, you have the best opportunity to keep your costs low, and you don't need any regional cooperation for processing. In fact, I have made a note to myself to call Erik and make a visit to his processing plant, because it sounds like one of the best, in terms of cost that he gave us, it sounds like one of the best things going. I want to see it. And that's a lead into you, Erik.
Yeah, I'll also make the comment about the problem with regionalism when you focus all your resources going to one person, whether it be a large corporation that can handle the load, you basically eliminate competition to some degree. The reason our costs are controlled is because we do a very good job writing specifications and actually having competition. This region has benefited from mid-size hauling companies. In addition to the large corporations, we have mid-size haulers, and that allows us to have good bids come in, which allows us to control costs. If you do it regionally, it creates problems because you've eliminated some of that competition. Now, through the Council of Governments, which is in DC, and also the Northern Virginia Regional Commission, all the solid waste managers and recycling coordinators meet on a monthly basis. And we share ideas and share issues that are impacting us. And where we can, we have kind of shared what people think generally are what is the right things to recycle. The Purple Bin Club is a good example of
excuse me,
approach to managing glass. Fairfax, Alexandria, Arlington, I guess the city of Vienna, Prince William County, all of us are messaging together about the Purple Bin Club and glass recycling from a regional perspective. So it seems to be working. But again, it's always, you're looking out for your own organization, but you're trying to figure out where you can leverage that from a regional perspective. And the balancing of both those things works best.
Mm-hmm. Good, very good. So folks are asking, what kinds of things do the recycled plastics get turned into? What kinds of products? You mentioned that 9% of our, here in Arlington, gets recycled. And folks are wondering, in terms of the plastic bags that we drop off at grocery stores, do those get used for anything?
Yeah, the plastic bags actually gets turned into wood, plastic wood like Trex. So when you go to Home Depot and you have plastic decking, that's where most of your plastic film is going for that purpose. You know, PET bottles are being recycled down or into recycled PET bottles. They can do that probably 3 to 5 times based on, you know, the fiber string length and those kinds of things. For number 2s. Number 5, polypropylene. You probably all had a polypropylene fleece top at one point or another. So they're making it into, you know, clothing and other things along those lines. But if you looked at the various, what people make PET out of or polypropylene, you'll see a long list of commodities that are made out of those various plastics.
Mhm.
I would just add to that, there is considerable investment both on the incineration side and on the material reuse side on what to do with the other plastic grades that Erik mentioned that we do have markets for. And it's a very vibrant, competitive market. I would say there are 40 companies, probably 20 are incineration companies, 20, when I say incineration, it could be gasification. I don't know the exact technology. And on the other hand, there are about same companies that are looking at material recovery, producing products such as Erik mentioned, and perhaps new ones. So it's a very exciting time, but I want to get back to the film in this short regard. No matter what we do, and it's great and creative, we have to stop the flow of this material. And that's something beyond us as individuals and as a local government, and that's where we need attention. Now, I don't work in that field. I work in the recycling field, but I do understand that, as many of these groups say, we can't recycle our way out of the plastic problem. And I do believe that.
On that note, somebody had the comment that using the waste to energy process allows municipalities to ignore waste reduction. And, you know, can Arlington, Erik, I guess this is for you, can Arlington find a way to end the incineration? And what would that look like in the next generation?
Yeah. I think, you know, there are really two things there. There's incineration, there's waste reduction. I think we always strive for people to generate less. And actually, over time, Arlington is sending less and less stuff to the waste energy facility. When I first got here, we were sending about 43,000 tons a year to the waste energy facility. Now we're sending about 27 or 28,000 tons. So because of other diversion things where we're taking yard waste out, increasing the recycling program, potentially taking food scraps out of the waste stream, we are actually reducing what is actually going for disposal, and it's going to the more, you know, beneficial recycling or compost side of the equation. And we've been doing that ever since really 2004 timeframe, trying to make those things. Waste energy doesn't necessarily say, you know, generate more. What it does is says to me, what is left and people can't have a way to manage effectively from a recycling side. It gives an alternative that, again, people will debate this, what's better than landfilling, but we and the EPA and others say waste energy is better than landfilling. And so, yes, there are emissions associated. We have scrubbers. We're actually now installing low NOx technology in our burners. The first one is going and being tested now, which will dramatically reduce the NOx emissions from them. So our waste energy plant does extremely well from the emissions profile perspective. So as an alternative, when we say 90% diversion for zero waste, it's because people acknowledge there's 10% you got to figure out what to do with. And whether you put it in a landfill or whether you do energy recovery from it, again, unless technology changes in the next 10 to 20 years, we want to make sure we are managing that material, that 10%, in a responsible way. And again, between landfilling and waste energy, we think waste energy is a better alternative than landfilling. And so we want to have that option.
Thanks very much. This is the last question. Neil, it seems like you want to jump in.
Only to say, Erik's very articulate on the issue. Another thing in the favor of incineration is that it's pretty low cost. I don't know exactly what the cost in Fairfax is, but I imagine it's in the mid-50s where most of the incinerators in this region are. Having said that, we could have a debate which we will not have tonight. But I certainly respect Erik's opinion, and I understand why it's such a convenience to the area to have that incinerator.
Okay, so here's the final question, maybe to start with you, Neil.
Sure.
What do you think the prospects might be in Arlington for the reusable takeout tray movement? And thanks to Miriam, who I know is championing this movement, and we all can play a part, but do you think it's feasible? Are there jurisdictions that are doing that?
Absolutely, and of course I support Miriam's work in this area. It's happening, and the trigger was this legislation. I think Berkeley was the first city to do it. Now many others have, and many others are trying to ban single-use plastics. As we all know, you go to a carryout, you get a lot of volume of garbage with your sandwich and drink. And we want to, cities want to prevent that. And as soon as that happened, in fact, I wrote a blurb about this, I'd be happy to pass it on. 2 new companies got started, one in Berkeley, one in San Francisco, supplying like University of California, Berkeley, with these reusable, where you could either reusable trays and reusable clams, they call these things that you put your sandwich or salad in. And you could either take them home and wash them, obviously there's a deposit system, or you could leave them there and the store the business picks them up, washes them and brings them back sanitary. It's a new business created by the new reality of COVID and the waste issue. We want to get rid of plastics. This is a good way to do it. Now these trays may be made out of plastic, but they'll be made out of plastic that we can sanitize.
Right. Excellent.
So I would suggest that would be a positive action. I don't know the politics of the city, but of the county, but yeah, I think that would be a plus. And Berkeley and Palo Alto are pretty good examples.
Erik, any thoughts on that?
Again, I'm kind of concerned about anything that creates more. If you can get your sandwich in wrapped in paper as opposed to this reusable plastic item, that's a better option for me. Because I don't know if you've ever taken a Chinese takeout where you have similar containers. Yeah. You get 20 of them stacked up in your kitchen. You go, what do I do with all this stuff? So again, we follow the waste hierarchy to reduce and minimize and say, no, thank you. Can I just, I understand in some food it makes sense. It just has to happen that way. So yeah, anything that is more durable is better than something that's disposable.
Thanks so much to our 2 presenters. Over to Eleanor.
Great. Well, thank you again, Neil, and thank you, Erik. This was a wonderful conversation, and for everybody who's joined us. So our last presenters tonight are an amazing group of students who are active right here at Yorktown High School. Their club is called For a Strawless Sea, and they've been also working with teens across the region through the Global CoLab Network to talk about plastics and waste. So I'm going to turn it over to Ellie, Kayla, Katya, Lonnie, Brooke, Molly, Addie, and Katie, and we're very thrilled to have this group.
Thank you so much. All right, I'm just going to take a minute to share my screen. Hi, everyone. I'm Kayla Peel.
And I'm Ellie Cowan. We are 2 of the leaders of the For a Strawless Sea Club at Yorktown High School here in Arlington, Virginia. Along with several other club members and leaders, we're going to give you a short 10-minute presentation on our club, what we do, and how you can engage with us.
We wanted to start out by saying that we will be hosting a youth mobilization forum in collaboration with the Sustainable Scoop and EcoAction Arlington on June 22nd at 7 p.m. And this event will be entirely teen-led, and all youth up to the age of 19 are welcome. The teens will be divided into 3 breakout rooms where they will discuss hunger, plastics, and climate change. Not only will we be having powerful discussions about these pressing issues, but we also will be brainstorming
We ask that you reach out to your networks, including teachers, organizations, and businesses, to spread the word about this upcoming discussion, because it is our hope we can reach a wider audience of teens and work together to make Arlington and the world a more sustainable place. Teens can register on the EcoAction Arlington website under the Events and Volunteer Opportunities page.
Based on the Story of Plastic documentary we all just watched, we don't need to go into details of why we started this club. It's pretty clear that plastic pollution is a widespread issue, and that's not just about straws. About 1.5 years ago, we started the For a Strawless Sea Club. Throughout our journey, we have strived to reduce dependency on single-use materials across Arlington and in the greater DMV area through education and community action.
Since we started our club 1.5 years ago, we have partnered with EcoAction Arlington in our efforts to promote sustainability across Arlington and our club volunteers for the Arlington Straw Free campaign. We've participated in multiple surveying events to ask restaurants what their sustainable practices are, and have helped create promotional materials for the campaign. Visit the SFA page on EcoAction Arlington's website to see what restaurants in your neighborhood are participating and how you can get involved.
At the Westover and Marymount farmers markets, we spread the word about the straw-free campaign while educating community members about the harmful effects of single-use plastics. We've learned a lot about people's outlook on the single-use problem here in Arlington and hope we can continue to address their concerns through outreach and advocacy.
Through EcoAction Arlington, our club has had the opportunity to co-sponsor stream cleanups at places like Bon Air and Barcroft Park. These events are a great way to get family, friends, and the community involved, so we encourage everyone to come out and join our future projects.
Outside of school and EcoAction Arlington, our club also focuses our efforts around the Eco-Teen Action Network's Plastics Hub. The Plastics Hub is a collaboration between the NGO, Global Collab Network, and the Smithsonian Earth Optimism Program. The goal of these hubs is to empower teens locally and globally to address the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and achieve Earth optimism. The network meets in virtual teen-led gatherings with adult mentors to act and promote positive solutions to make the world a better place.
Through the Global Collab, our club was given the opportunity to hold a stand at the National Zoo. To attract visitors, we organized a game where participants would answer 10 questions about plastic and its effects on the environment. Once completed, players could choose from an arrangement of prizes like bamboo straws and reusable water bottles. We loved getting to teach people of all ages about single-use dependency and the drastic effects that it has on marine life and the world's ecosystems.
Our biggest initiative with the Plastics Hub is the Reusable To-Go Box program, which will be shown on the next slide how it works. So participating restaurants give customers a reusable container to take home food in instead of a styrofoam one or another discardable option. When customers are finished using their container, they drop it off at pickup sites, which could be near the restaurant you just ate at or at your house or at workplace. And then these dirty containers will be picked up, industrially washed, and redistributed to restaurants. This closed loop cycle would be a more sustainable alternative to those currently in place.
We're currently in the process of implementing the system at either National Landing, which is the location of Amazon's second headquarters, or in DC with the help of a company called Plastic Tree, whose goal is to reduce production of plastics through reuse. Although it hasn't yet been implemented in these areas, we have already received immense amounts of support through the community, Arlington County, and the media. For example, we were chosen as the Millennial Generation nominee at the 4 Generations Sustainable Solutions Award ceremony last December, and we were also interviewed for an article in the Washington Business Journal. This initiative has given us some unique opportunities to have meetings with representatives from Amazon, JBG Smith, Crystal City Bid, and so many more. We have learned a lot through this experience, like organizing large meetings with corporations, grant writing, and also working collaboratively and professionally.
The Plastics Hub spread the word about this initiative through both a recycling fair at the Environmental Protection Agency and Arlington Civic Association meetings. At the Environmental Protection Agency, we presented our To-Go Box initiative to other companies presenting there. We also got to learn about their initiatives like Colgate's new sustainable packaging. It was a great networking opportunity and chance to learn about what other companies were doing to be more sustainable.
At the Aurora Hills Civic Association meeting, we talked to community members about the Reusable To-Go Box initiative. We answered their questions about how a system like this could work in Arlington and got many community members to sign a petition supporting the initiative.
So ultimately, what I personally love, and I think what a lot of us love about this club in the Eco-Teen Action Network, is that anyone with any interest can find a way to engage with our efforts. Whether you like public policy, digital art, creative writing, there's always an opportunity for you to incorporate that interest into the SFA campaign, our website blogs, or the To-Go Box program. The one thing we hope you can take away from this presentation is that at the end of the day, we can educate our community, spread awareness, and reduce our personal use of single-use plastics as much as we want, but these efforts will only do so much. Ultimately, it will take the participation of the government and the accountability of corporations to implement effective legislation.
We hope that you will join us in our efforts to minimize single-use plastics through both small-scale community-based advocacy and large-scale government lobbying like the Arlington is undertaking. Thank you so much for listening. If you're interested in reaching out to us, here are some of our contacts. Feel free to take a picture if that's helpful. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Eleanor and EcoAction Arlington.
Thank you so much to the entire Forest Strawless Sea team. And actually, if we could have everybody, I'd like to thank all three of our speakers. So thank you to Neil Seldman, Erik Grabowsky, and the wonderful team from Forest Strawless Sea. And we can all do our amazing Zoom applause. So we'd like to leave you with our request from EcoAction Arlington to take action. And I'm going to give you the headline and then 3 total actions. So the headline is EcoAction Arlington is starting a campaign to educate people about plastic bags, and we want to start a petition. So please go to, and you go, hopefully we'll see this on my screen, which is not cooperating, tinyurl.com/EcoAction plastic bag tax, and join EcoAction Arlington in urging the Arlington County Board to enact a 5-cent tax on plastic bags. We think this is an important message. This is not the ideal way that we'd ultimately like legislation to be enacted in Virginia, but this is the opportunity we have. And we do think it's important for a couple of reasons. We want Richmond to hear back that after passing the bill that authorized us to do this, that communities are taking action. And I think we want Arlington to be the first locality in Virginia to do this. So please go to our website, sign this petition, and please share it with others. Our goal is 1,000 signatures, but maybe we can do much more. So we also do want to encourage you to get involved. We have several opportunities to connect, and the main one I wanted to highlight tonight is our R4 Action Group and the Straw Free Arlington groups. You've heard about the Straw Free Arlington group from the Forest Strawless Sea folks. We meet monthly for both of these groups, and this is the group of volunteers that are concerned about these issues in our community and have banded together under EcoAction Arlington to take action. I've shared my information on the screen. Please contact us and let us know if you're interested in the R4 Action Group. And tomorrow we'll send an email to everybody who's here tonight with all of the information from tonight, as well as information about the petition, this R4 Action Group, and the contact information for our speakers. And then the very last thing I wanted to share is I do think this is a very hard and tricky time, but I don't want this message about our concern about waste, reducing waste and plastics to lessen. So this message has resonated strongly in our community, and I think we want to keep that going. I heard a lot of great chat in the group about people talking about, well, you still can take your reusable bags to the stores if you bag your own. Let's keep doing all of these things and more. So please share your ideas with us, share them with each other, and bring these messages to your communities. So we really do appreciate everybody coming tonight. We'll be doing more education because we've had such a wonderful response to this film and this discussion. And then on June 22nd, please again invite all the students up to age 19 to join the Forest Strawless Sea folks in their youth mobilization event that we are hosting. So again, thank you everybody. Thank you to our speakers, and we really appreciate you joining EcoAction Arlington here tonight.
Night.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you, Carrie.
Oh, you're
Thank
welcome.
you, Joan.
Did we get a copy of the chat?
Oh, let me do that. Thank you.
Just that there was a lot of good conversations going on there.
Yeah. Hard to absorb it all.
Yeah, I think I can go.
Hey, Eleanor, I sent you a copy of my presentation, so hopefully you have that.
Yeah, I got that, and so you're comfortable with me sharing it.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Erik. We really appreciate it.
I'm sitting here running for the comments, so thank you.
Oh, look at that cat.
Erik, can you still take questions?
Sure.
Okay. Hey, it's Liz through Gaber. How are you?
Good, Liz. How are you?
Good. Hey, I was just wondering, I put a question in the chat, but we couldn't get to that question. So thank you for staying on. So maybe I can ask it. So with the Covanta facility, one of the things that I noticed from the film is they said something like there's 86,000 registered chemicals that we know of in the world or something, and only 187 are monitored from incineration facility standpoint. So, and when I went down to Covanta to tour it, I still couldn't get my arms around like what is actually coming out of the stacks. I mean, I know they have really good emissions levels for the things that are regulated, but I guess I'm concerned because so much of this plastic, and if we use the waste energy facilities as a management tool for what really can't be recycled or has no other place to go, I mean, do we really know what all is being released in the air? Because it came to mind because Neil also mentioned that the Fairfax incinerator, which I think the Lorton facility is also waste energy, that he said something like it's responsible for 55% of the air pollution in the county. And I just had never heard that information before. So I was wondering if you had any guidance on that.
So I'm going to make a couple of comments. If you think about Fairfax County and you also think about Arlington and Alexandria, there's very little industrial processes going on. So when you have any kind of burning facility that generates any kind of emissions, we basically have cars and the waste energy facility as far as emission things, because we just don't have any real industry here. So it's not surprising. Now in Alexandria, next to the waste energy facility is actually an asphalt plant. So they have a piece of that emissions as well. But if you go around Arlington, there are no real generators. We can talk about airplane emissions and car emissions, but really from, engine combustion more so than anything else. So that data, is indicative of the fact that we have low industrialization going on and we have this thing that's generating power. So that's that. As far as the emissions, you and I, to some degree, have to rely on the experts, which is the Environmental Protection Agency, to say, hey, what is dangerous for us to either breathe or eat or whatever it is. And so when they talk about the regulated list of emissions that they're regulating, we're hoping they have done the analysis to sort of say, this is what comes out. Let's break down this and figure out what portions of it are, in fact, have any kind of toxicity to them. And they do the chemical analysis. And so then they set thresholds for these things and say, okay, now we can always question what that threshold is, but they set these thresholds as to what's hazardous for human health. But again, if you eat any of this or absorb any of this for a prolonged period of times, there's probably some impact. But by the measure they've established because they have a variety of things. They have a bag house, which actually sends the gases through these bags that actually, take a lot of the chemicals out. They put other emissions in or other chemicals in to neutralize some of the things. And then what comes out is what they evaluate. And so I am hopeful that the EPA is doing their job, and things that are toxic or hazardous to us, they are in fact regulating. And so you have to have some confidence, because I haven't gone through and say, what else is in that emission besides what they're measuring. I would imagine they've got most of what is of a concern for you or I that they're actually focused on. I think to some degree you just have to trust people to do their jobs well.
Mm-hmm.
This is a highly regulated industry as far as waste energy or any kind of burning technologies, just because they are concerned about the air impacts. We're a non-attainment area in the Northern Virginia and DC area, so they are very careful as to what they allow people to emit. And again, our plant is actually one of the best from the emissions profile of all the Covanta facilities in North America. They really do a good job. And with this new low NOx reduction system, which will be, the first one went in this past winter. It's being in a test phase now. They'll put another one in this fall, winter, and the third one will go in next year. And so all 3 of the boilers will have the new low NOx system by the end of next year. And so that's pretty exciting from even further reducing the NOx in the area, which is actually a positive thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure I answered all your questions, but I think so.
No, that you did. Thank you very much. And any update on the Prince William facility for composting?
We are negotiating with them, and so part of this is we need to bring the board something in the October, November timeframe. And again, this is just one more data point to say, here's what we've negotiated cost, and the board's gonna have to make a decision and figure out whether that commits them for the July 1st implementation of food scraps collection. So the Free State Farm was unwilling to wait forever for the county because they want to sell that capacity. So in order for the county to reserve the capacity, that's what we're doing right now. We're negotiating with Free State Farms. They want our food scraps, they want our organics, and we want to take it to them. So we're going through that negotiation phase right now. We're actually going to talk to Free State again on Friday. We talked with them 2 weeks ago. So we have actually started to create a term sheet for our contract with them.
Okay. Are you including any estimates or projections like that, you know, say Amazon might be bringing in terms of the amount generated? I mean, I'm just wondering, like, I would assume that's in part what you're negotiating is how much we can provide that we say we'll bring to them.
Yeah, part of the challenge is we only really directly manage the residential program. We regulate the commercial. So as far as what we're actually capacity-wise, we're actually only securing capacity for the residential program. And as we prove that it's successful in the residential program, typically what we do from a management perspective, we then regulate it through legislation. The county board will adopt ordinance that says all the multifamily businesses who generate X number of tons of food scraps need to then figure out a way to process it. And then what will happen with Free State Farm, they're going to have additional capacity coming online later. So there's going to be enough capacity, we think, with the second phase coming on, that they will be able to manage more and more of the food scraps. And again, there's also a facility in Prince George's County that is potentially trying to expand. So I think there's going to be capacity, but we are going to rely on the private sector to provide for that collection of that material and then how they manage it, meaning some kind of compost facility. They may choose to ship it somewhere else, put it on train cars or do something else with it instead of possibly going to Free State or Prince George's County. But as we regulate that community and say, you must do this, they will figure out a solution to meet the regulatory requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Anything
Thank you,
else?
Erik.
Hey, thank you all. This has been great. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we had a great
So
turnout, and I think it was a good dialogue. So
good. All right. Hey, everybody, have a great night. Thank you all.
all right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.